What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 15th Doctor Ncuti Gatwa story, 73 Yards. It's Season 1, Episode 4, technically 5, but I'm counting it as Episode 4, 73 Yards. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag start to this season so far. If we're talking Church and Ruby Road as well, I didn't really like Church and Ruby Road. I really didn't like Space Babies. I think my thoughts on that have actually gone down from when I reviewed it. The Devil's Chord was a bit better, but I still didn't love it. Boom, last time out, I thought was pretty decent. You know, we're getting more towards what I'm liking. And then now we have 73 Yards, which is the first Doctor Light story, very Doctor Light story. He's barely in this one at all. It is solely purposed on Ruby. So I didn't really know this was a Doctor Light story going into it. I had an idea, but I didn't 100% know until we got into it. And we'll talk about it in this episode, but I definitely have some opinions on this that I didn't expect to have. And, you know, it's been quite a surprise for me in some ways. The first thing I do want to mention, actually, which I haven't put in my notes, but there was no intro in this episode. There was no title sequence. So I don't know why that was. I don't know if it was because the Doctor wasn't there. We didn't get a title sequence, maybe. I don't know. Something to note. But anyway, let's get started with the cast. Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor. Well, to be honest, I don't really have a whole lot to say about him in this episode because he's barely in it at all. We see him a little bit at the start with Ruby until he disappears, and then we see him again at the end of the episode, but most of that is this thing we've already seen from the start of the episode with a little bit extra on top of that because of how the story works out. By the way, there will be spoilers in this video, as there usually are. But from what we see of Ncuti, he's good. He has the funny lines. He seems very energetic, and I like that sort of thing. And he does a good job in the 2-3 minutes that he's in. Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. Now, she is the emphasis. She is the main thing of this episode. I've been enjoying Ruby lately. I think she's a good companion. She hasn't quite hit that stride for me yet, but I've been, on the most part, enjoying her so far. In this episode, she takes center stage. She is the main character, the main plot point of this episode, and she is great. She is so good in this story. Millie Gibson does a brilliant performance taking the lead role in this episode. She's so good. Just the whole thing, really, really good. I mean, although I've been enjoying Ruby and on the most part Millie's performance, I was never really blown away by it. But this episode, honestly, I was blown away by her performance. I just think she was really, really good. She just absolutely took the reins in this one. So good. If it wasn't for her performance, this one could have been let down quite a lot, but she really, she had to be good in this episode, being such a pivotal point of it, and she absolutely ran away with it. Alright, so let's get on to some points for this episode. The Doctor has disappeared and someone is following Ruby. So the TARDIS lands on this kind of cliff face in Wales, and the Doctor and Ruby step out of the TARDIS, and then the Doctor steps on this circle on the floor, and then all of a sudden he disappears, and the rest of the story, there is no Doctor until the very end when we go back to that point again, which we'll get onto later. But yeah, it's a very interesting opening. It's all, happy-go-lucky, very, very happy at the start of the episode, but then the rest of the whole episode is, I wouldn't really say dark, but it takes a massive tonal shift, and it really got me intrigued straight away. The circle of cotton was broken and now Mad Jack is here. So basically, the Doctor steps on this kind of circle of cotton on the floor with all these toys on it. Then he disappears. Ruby reads some of these scrolls that were on this piece of cotton as well with the toys. One of them says something about Mad Jack is back or something like that. And he will rest in peace or something or other. The people in the pub then start talking about Mad Jack's return because of this. Although it ended up kind of being a trick, and that's my next point. The people in the pub tricked Ruby. When she told them about stepping on this cotton, about reading the scroll, this whole thing about Mad Jack, that whole tense moment was absolutely the tension there. I had tingles in that scene. I thought, this is so good. It's so well acted by everyone. It was so well directed, so well shot. I loved it. And then for her, when somebody knocks on the door, she opens the door. They all think it's Mad Jack coming for you. The tension was crazy. And then she opens the door and it's just some guy coming to deliver some stuff for the pub. I thought that whole scene was beautiful. Although, it was a trick by the pub goers. But at the same time, it was also true. Mad Jack, as far as I mean, it's a bit of a confusing episode to get your head around with. I think I need a couple of rewatches to properly understand it. But Mad Jack, from what I can tell, did return because of this circle. So they weren't lying. But just that whole scene was brilliant. Ruby's mum talked to the woman and has run away. So yeah, what ended up happening? So this woman seems to be 73 yards at all times away from Ruby. If Ruby tries to go towards her, the woman just gets further back. She stays at 73 yards, she doesn't, if Ruby moves closer, the woman moves with her. And then every time, you had the first one, which I think was Susan Twist again, the kind of hiker in the mountains. By the way, it has finally been mentioned that, because Ruby says, "Have I seen you before?" And the woman's like, "I don't think so." But I'm pretty sure that's Susan Twist, isn't it? The actress who's been in every episode so far. So there's something going on there because it's now been acknowledged by one of our main characters that, I think I recognize you. So there is something going on there for sure. If not, it's a very big red herring. So she goes up and talks to the woman and then runs away, and everybody that seems to go up and talk to this woman that's following Ruby runs away like scared. And then it happens to Ruby's mum. With everything that happens later on in the episode, I'm a bit confused as to why Ruby's mum runs away. It doesn't, not necessarily runs away, but how she then, she goes past in the taxi, she won't answer Ruby's phone calls. She's just completely ignoring Ruby. I don't really understand why that is, specifically for Ruby's mum. It doesn't really make much sense with the context of what happens at the end. But that whole scene especially was devastating and so well done. Kate Stewart is back. I loved seeing Kate Stewart. Was not really expecting her to be in this story, although I think it was rumoured that UNIT were going to be in this story. I don't know. I haven't really been going crazy in on the rumours because I've been trying to stay as spoiler-free as I can. But yeah, Kate Stewart is back. She is here to talk to Ruby to try and figure out what's going on here. Where's the doctor? What's going on with all this? And that whole scene is really good. Her talking, Ruby and Kate talking at kind of the cafe. Really, really good stuff. Great acting by both of them. I love the little, funny references and digs and that, that go on there. How Ruby's like, "Oh, I took a picture of the woman with my phone. It's a really good camera. I got the best phone with the best camera, and I still can't, get a good picture of her." And then Kate's like, "Yeah, well, we've got much better technology than that. Our technology is way better than yours, but we couldn't get a good picture either." I like that scene. Then you also have units that try to capture the woman, but they all get put under her power, including Kate. So yeah, they get all the unit soldiers to converge in on this woman to talk to her, to not talk to her. They just want to kind of detain her. And Kate's on the phone with one of the soldiers at the time. And then they get put under her power, this woman's power, and Kate over the phone, it kind of goes to her as well. And she also gets put under this power and also, goes off and leaves Ruby behind. So that whole thing, having Kate here, but having, looking like, okay, maybe we're getting somewhere with UNIT and all that, for them to then just be completely useless because they've been also taken over by this woman, is just... It just constantly, this episode was like, oh, we might be getting somewhere. Nope, we're back to square one again. Oh, no, we're back. Mad Jack, aka Roger, becomes Prime Minister in 2046. So yeah, when at the start of the episode, when the Doctor and Ruby come out of the TARDIS, the Doctor starts talking about this Roger guy, also known as Mad Jack. I'm pretty sure that's what he says. And he said he becomes Prime Minister in 2046, and there's like a nuclear explosion or something that's caused by him. And yeah, we then find out that this guy, the guy's called Roger, but he mentions in an interview that some people call him Mad Jack, so I think they're supposed to be the same person. It is a little bit confusing. Then he becomes the Prime Minister in this timeline, and that's when Ruby starts to piece things together. Ruby makes the woman talk to Roger. So Ruby's doing a little bit of, background work trying to, because she knows what happens with this Roger guy and the nuclear explosion. So she is now trying to come up with a plan to stop that from happening. And she figures out that this woman is here for her to she stands in the middle of the football field or soccer pitch, whatever it is, and walks back so that Roger is 73 yards away. That is when the woman is also 73 yards away. The woman talks to Roger. Roger runs away. He is no longer Prime Minister. He, goes insane or whatever the hell happens to him. And yeah, basically he's like, no, I'm not being Prime Minister anymore. And she saves the day with that. I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. And I can believe that, that was in Ruby's mind to do that because, at this point she'd been followed around by this woman for like 20 years or something. She probably was figuring out what was going on here. And that whole scene, once again, really, really good. The woman was an older version of Ruby. Now, this is where it gets a bit more confusing and a little bit more like I'm not 100% sure how this works. So it turns out that the woman that's following Ruby the whole time was Ruby. So it was Ruby when she was like 80 or something, when she was really old. She'd, gone through all the stuff that we've just seen her go through. That woman is Ruby. And then the TARDIS, we then cut back to the TARDIS landing, like it did at the start of the episode. We see all that stuff with the Doctor and Ruby again talking. And then Ruby sees the woman she gets distracted by the woman in the distance. This time it stops the Doctor. He doesn't stand on the circle. He just misses it. And then none of this has happened. So it's a bit of a confusing thing. And this is where my whole thing with Ruby's mum running away doesn't make sense either. Because Ruby would have gone up to older Ruby, run away, and then I don't really understand why she then, because I'm guessing that this older Ruby was then telling people, hey, this guy's gonna, blow up the world. I'm guessing that's what this old Ruby was telling everyone, and they were like, oh my god. I don't know how that then made Ruby's mum angry at younger Ruby. I'm a little bit confused with how that works, but yeah. So after the Rubies have saved the day by not stepping on the circle, having this not play out this time, I'm then a little bit confused about the ending, because does Will Rogers still cause a nuclear explosion in this timeline? His name is mentioned, but now Ruby won't be there to stop him. So the whole thing with this was that the circle was broken. Okay, this is how I think this worked. This is just how I think it worked after one watch. When the circle was broken, this Mad Jack was released and kind of became one with Roger, right? So Roger already exists in this universe, but Mad Jack has embodied this Roger guy, and it's Mad Jack within Roger who sets off this explosion. So now that we haven't stepped on the circle, Roger is still out there. He will still become Prime Minister, but he's now just a normal guy. Mad Jack is not... Oops, sorry, I just hit my microphone, if you heard that. Mad Jack is not in the world anymore. His circle has not been broken. He's still, dead or whatever. He's no longer in Roger. He's not going to be in Roger anymore. So now Roger will just be a normal guy. So then the explosion won't happen. That is how I think it plays out. I could be wrong. We might figure out later on in the season that this explosion does still happen. I think it will be a little bit unfortunate if that is the case, because then it will kind of feel like a waste of all right, so by breaking the circle, Ruby actually ends up saving the day to then make sure that Ruby doesn't step on the circle, which then doesn't save the day. It's going to get very confusing. I mean, it already is very confusing, but it could get even more confusing later on if it turns out that the explosion did still happen, because then it's like, well, now we're in this weird thing of, we should have stepped on the circle then. It's very, very timey-wimey. But yes, that was 73 yards. A very interesting episode of Doctor Who. Very different to anything we've seen really ever, especially of this new season, this new Disney Plus era. What am I going to give it out of 10? Right now, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I really loved watching this. I haven't had this with this season so far. I mean, altogether, I had this a little bit with the David Tennant specials, especially Wild Blue Yonder. But for the Ncuti story so far, even Boom, I gave Boom a 7 out of 10. I haven't quite had this feeling of I'm intrigued. This story didn't really even have a villain. It didn't have the Doctor in it barely. It didn't really have a monster in it. But I just felt gripped and engaged the whole way through. I think the end is I'm a little bit unsure about it. I think on rewatches I might understand it a bit more after watching the whole season. If more things come out after that, I will understand it a bit more. So that's why for now I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I was thinking maybe an 8 or an 8.5, but it's a 9 for now. That could drop a little bit depending on how things resolve later in the season. But yeah, it's a 9 out of 10 for 73 yards at the moment. Really, really enjoyed this one. Very glad that although it wasn't a very Doctor Who-y episode. It almost felt like a Black Mirror episode, to be honest. I've seen a couple of people say that on Twitter. I still really enjoyed it and thought it was thoroughly enjoyable. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.